Hello everybody, I am Brian Mullins the Fox, and by popular demand in a poll, I'm going to be ranting/commentating about my stance on Texas's recent 6-week abortion ban. Before I read an article about it, I just want to give you my general stance. It's not entirely wrong. How long would you think it takes a woman to get an abortion, assuming that abortions aren't regulated in most states of the country already, with the Hyde Amendment and other similar laws? Do both pro-lifers and pro-choicers believe, truly beyond the shadow of a doubt, that women are so fucking lazy with their own bodies, they choose to procrastinate on when they realize they're pregnant or not? Assuming that all pregnancies are planned and not due to a circumstance outside of their control in some unfortunate instances, like rape or incest. I don't really like the abortion ban in Texas. It's long enough for some women, assuming that most, if not all, women just choose to get an abortion willy-nilly or just out of spite due to a romantic relationship growing sour. Here's another way that women can get away with falsely accusing you of rape and ruining your life. You have sex with them consensually when you're in a relationship. Once you people broke up at a certain time in the relationship, once the woman's pregnant, months prior to them breaking up, the woman could technically go after you out of spite, being vindictive, and psychological manipulators, to go as far as accusing you of technically raping them, even though it's technically not rape. It was never forced against their will. They were in a relationship. The sex was consensual, not forced. And also, there's really no reason for the man to serve any prison time for being in a relationship with a horny bimbo like you, with a horny fucking ex like you. If you are a woman in your adult years or senior years and you do that, fuck you. You're one of the main contributors to more men committing suicide as time goes on. Let's move on and read the article already. According to Houston Public Media, written and published by Allison Waller of the Texas Tribune, it's called "Texas Has Banned Abortions at About 6 Weeks, but the time frame for pregnant patients to get one is less than 2. Texas's new stringent abortion law has been described as a ban on abortions that kick in as early as 6 weeks of pregnancy. It's a characterization politicians have clung to, with Governor Greg Abbott using it to defend why the law doesn't exempt victims of rape or incest. Now that is where I find the fucking abortion ban to be wrong. Quote unquote, obviously, it provides at least 6 weeks for a person to be able to get an abortion, he said Tuesday, arguing it doesn't force those victims to carry their pregnancy to full term. But in reality, the time frame to get an abortion is much shorter, even if someone realizes they are pregnant right away. And in Texas, more than 80% of abortions happened after the 6-week mark. Measuring the length of pregnancy. The new law does not actually provide a specific time frame for someone to get an abortion, but does stipulate that one cannot occur once cardiac activity is detected. That happens around roughly the 6th week of pregnancy. But calling it strictly a 6-week ban fails to take into account the nuance and circumstances many people face when it comes to pregnancy, according to medical professionals and leading medical organizations. For one, medically, the length of pregnancy is not typically measured from the date of conception. Instead, the new law notes pregnancy is calculated from the first day of the woman's last menstrual period. The statement lines up with the typical way doctors initially work to determine gestational age, according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. But this traditional method assumes a person has regular periods that normally occur about every 28 days or 4 weeks. Many women have more irregular periods, and ovulation, or when an ovary releases an egg, usually occurs about 2 weeks after the end of a woman's last menstrual period. So on the day that you're actually ovulating, sending out the egg, and you have a chance for conception, by convention, we're saying that you're 2 weeks pregnant at that point. said Dr. Rachel Breedlove, who practices obstetrics and gynecology at St. David's South Austin Medical Center. So, I think it's really confusing for non-medical people to understand how could you be 2 weeks pregnant, but we're dating it from the last period, not from the date of conception. Here's how early pregnancy works. Doctors measure pregnancy by gestational age, which starts on the first day of the last menstrual period before someone gets pregnant. For people with a typical 28-day menstrual cycle, here's the timeline. Week 0, menstrual period starts. Week 1, nothing. Week 2, ovulation. Conception happens if a sperm fertilizes the egg. 3. Implantation. The fertilized egg attaches to the uterus and pregnancy officially starts. Week 4, missed period. Week 5, window of abortion under SB 8. At this point, a pregnancy test would come back positive, but people with irregular cycles may not suspect they are pregnant. Week 6, abortions prohibited after cardiac activity can be detected by ultrasound. Around 6 weeks gestation. About 2 weeks from conception and 4 weeks from their last period, someone could potentially test pregnant after missing the start of their new period. However, unless someone is intending to get pregnant or closely monitoring their period, it's unlikely they'll know they're pregnant within this neat time frame. For people with irregular periods, their cycles unpredictably can make it even trickier to determine gestational age or detect if their period is late. Quote, most of us do not have clockwork cycles, Breedlove said. Quote, so what do most people do? They wait 5 to 7 days, and so then a lot of people are not even testing until a week after that missed period. So what's the real window of time someone has to get an abortion under the law? At the most, a person would have about 2 weeks to determine if they want to terminate their pregnancy or not under the law. However, medical professionals have said the likely time span is even shorter. Quote, unquote. I think more likely it's going to be about a week. Even that's going to be sort of an ideal situation, Breedlove said. There are a handful of reasons the window for termination could be condensed. For example, if a person opts to do a pregnancy test about a week after they've missed a period, which is not uncommon, that shortens the window. Also, in light of the new law being implemented, some abortion providers in the state have stopped performing abortions at the risk they will face legal action. Meaning some people may have to scramble to obtain an abortion out of state. Under previous Texas law, an ultrasound must be performed 24 hours before a person receives an abortion. There's a typo. Condensing an already limited window of time and requiring a person to make 2 visits. During the ultrasound, the doctor has to describe sonogram images to the person and also check for any presence of cardiac activity. Some interpretations of the new law suggest another ultrasound would need to be done at the second visit to confirm cardiac activity hasn't developed, quote unquote. So that further compresses this timeline because now you have to have 2 visits, said Dr. John Thoppel, president of the Texas Association of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. There have been cases already since the law's been in effect where somebody went in and the next 24 hours cardiac activity progressed and they were unable to proceed. When can pregnancy be detected via ultrasound? Usually the earliest that pregnancy can be detected in the uterus through ultrasound is around the 5-week gestation period, Breedlove said. Doctors normally don't do an ultrasound that early unless it's a high-risk pregnancy. ACOG recommends receiving an ultrasound within a person's first trimester, which is about the first 13 weeks of pregnancy, as the most accurate method to determine gestational age. Breedlove said based on the patients she sees, most come in for their ultrasound at around 8 weeks. Some people also may wait even longer and receive their first ultrasound during their second trimester or at about 18 to 20 weeks pregnant, according to the nonprofit March of Dimes, which focuses on the health outcomes of mothers and babies. Under the new law, abortion is not permitted once an embryo's fetal heartbeat or cardiac activity is detected. The law states that cardiac activity begins at a biologically identifiable moment. Normally when the fetal heart is formed in the gestational sac, a fluid-filled structure that surrounds an embryo during early weeks of development. Experts have said, however, that the heartbeat moniker politicians have used in the bill is misleading, saying it's not a proper medical descriptor. Although cardiac tissue starts developing in the early weeks of pregnancy, an embryo does not have a fully developed heart by 6 weeks gestation when cardiac activity is usually first detected via ultrasound. Quote unquote, you can't see anything structurally that looks like a 4-chambered heart, but you can see a flicker of it, Breedlove said. Usually around 5 or 6 weeks, we're just barely able to see it, and it's really too small for us to be able to put a speaker to it and to be able to really hear. How developed is an embryo at 6 weeks gestation? At about 6 to 8 weeks gestation, an embryo is at most about a centimeter according to some doctors. Quote unquote, it almost looks like a tadpole in terms of what the embryo looks like at this point, Doppel said. So you're seeing kind of in the center of this flicker of motion, and that's the cardiac activity. Although cardiac activity can be detected around 6 weeks gestation, Breedlove said it's easier to hear the actual heartbeat around the 8-week mark. Quote unquote, we put basically a Doppler detector where we see that heartbeat flickering, and then we can turn on the speaker, and then you can hear the blood moving. And so that's the heartbeat that most people are able to hear, and that's usually more at the 8-week mark, she said. Now here is the rant. Let's make things clear. Let's be blunt here. I don't have any problem with the 6-week gap. I find that to be a considerably long time. Plenty of time for a woman, or at least 20% of abortions in the state of Texas, as an example, to then proceed. I don't really have much of any problems with the 6-week abortion ban altogether in general, except for one or two things. The first one being that it isn't excluding rape victims or victims of incest. And finally, number 2, the bill doesn't really go into enough depth on how the procedure must be within these 6 weeks. It's not specific enough. Yes, I still hear platitudes about abortion somehow being murder and abortion somehow being a human right. Abortion is neither. It's wrong. But at the same time, you should accept the fact that we need to exempt rape victims or any other victim of incest or molestation from this specific ban on abortion. But the problem with only letting women decide on their own on abortion without proper guidance or at least some helpful advice, bodily or mentally, what have you, it doesn't matter. Either you can't do abortions right, or you'll damage yourself internally and won't be able to notice it for hours, days, weeks, months, years, or even worse, decades. This whole idea of bodily autonomy is just a joke. It is such a fucking bullshit-ass platitude that both sides use on the subject or topic of abortion. It is so laughably myopic to use bodily autonomy and integrity as an excuse not to fully justify abortion being murder or not justifying that abortion is a human right. Because it isn't. It's a privilege. It's like saying smoking is a human right, in spite of the fact that smoking long-term, or even short-term for some people, causes cancer. Oral cancer? Lung cancer? Any type of cancer you can name under the sun. Because not every body is structured the same way bodily. Smoking is an action. Aborting a fetus is an action. Driving a car is an action. Having sex is an action. Whether consensual or not, it doesn't matter. It's still an action with or beyond your own control. For you are your own external influence. If you chose to get pregnant and later give birth when the term comes, that's your own decision. You do you. But if you chose to get pregnant and then just do a complete 180 and say fuck it all of a sudden, You can't just abort the fetus willy-nilly. You gotta stay true to your commission as a potential future mother once you intended to be a future mother. Don't desert your lover. Don't desert the man that allowed you to have access to the most important bodily fluid when it comes to reproduction, let alone conception. Semen. Sperm. Spunk. If you don't want to be a mother, if you don't want to be a wife, and if you just want to be one of the many feminists, or if not, women in general, having an all-or-nothing mentality on abortion, much less an all-or-nothing mentality when it comes to the sanctity and the fertility or infertility of men, just know this: you can't possibly learn on your own without being wrong. I don't care that politicians are hypocrites. I don't care if a Republican like Greg Abbott is a hypocrite. That's not the point. My main issue with this abortion ban is not exempting rape victims or victims of incest or women who just does a 180 and just chooses not to have children all of a sudden instead of, ironically, the old logic of thinking before you do the actions or committing to a role that you would hopefully be 100% committed to. It may seem to be not enough time. It may seem to be too much time, especially for 6 weeks, mind you. Make up your minds! Stop being naive. Stop flipping on a dime. Start actually thinking before you do anything, much less aborting a fetus, much less getting married, much less getting pregnant, much less tragically or unfortunately getting yourself raped, much like anything else, really. Oh no, women can't possibly think for themselves. They have to have other people decide for them. That's not the case. They do learn from other people, but they're not forced to, or they're not tempted to, simply because it's against their wills, simply because they can't choose on their own. That's bullshit. Choosing to get an abortion or choosing to get pregnant has nothing to do with the fictitious made-up idea of bodily autonomy and bodily integrity. No woman is perfect. No women would ever want to have sex with you as a man just because you're a man. You commit to a relationship, you earn it. They're not like fish. You teach a fisherman to starve before you teach a fisherman to feed himself, just so he can save other fish for other people for another day. You learn to wait. A lot of people just can't wait to get married, to be in a relationship in their late teenage years, if not just early mid-20s. In fact, if I can't achieve a successful relationship in my 30s, I may either just wait until I'm even older or not be in a relationship at all. That's an even harder thought process to go through, because not all women are easy to catch. Some women, if not most women, are very fickle. They choose not to think for themselves, ironically. I am in full favor of letting states individually decide on their own whether or not to keep abortion legal in their state or to render it illegal with some recommendations, exceptions, or certain conditions. Not every abortion or pregnancy is planned. Sometimes it's forced against their will, and that is a huge violation of human rights. And abortion in general is too. That's why there are regulations in the first place. That's why there's the Hyde Amendment. And now that's why there's the 6-week ban on abortion in the state of Texas. If Roe v. Wade violates the state's rights to make decisions on their own, not on a national scale, but on a state scale, then Roe v. Wade then must be overturned. But we have to be careful, because there will be an uprising, there will be an uproar, there will be an outright riot, because their platitudes will not be quote-unquote winning arguments anymore. There will be no winning arguments anymore. The debate was a complete sham all along. It was never about a woman's human rights. It was really never about her choice in the first place. It's never really about her body, is it? And when women don't fight the unfortunate circumstances of situations like rape or incest, a rape or incest is completed just as much or just as easily as one is completely made up. It is not a one said thing. It is not a one said situation or deal. It's multiple situations within a certain span of time. Women simply can't decide or think or go with their own words or go out on their own to survive the almost impossible outcomes of still living without any bodily harm or if not dead. Abortions should not just be based on mere freedom. There should be an actual reason to abort the fetus or don't abort at all. Either stick to your commission as a future mother or don't get married, don't get a boyfriend, don't get a husband, don't have children. Just think before. That's why the original stance on pro-for-thought is pro-for-thought or abortionary centrism. I am Brian Mullins the Fox, signing the fuck out.